Hello, welcome to Working Dragon Mystic, where we discuss real, metaphysical, and occult knowledge so that you can manifest real and tangible results in your life. This week, I want to talk about something that I think we might need to do a little bit more of a series on, but we're going to start here. Now, over time, I think everyone's heard me talk about the arcane senses. In fact, we did a video covering all the arcane senses and giving a few little tips and tricks and ways to work to develop those arcane senses. Now, one of the ones that a lot of people's been asking me about is Arcane Touch, the ability to feel something, to touch something as if it was real. And this is something that is very doable. Yes, most practitioners and magicians aren't hyperly worried about this one, because when we're talking about the arcane senses, our main focus is usually on divinations, journey work, and evocation. And in all three of these pillars of magic, the three arcane pillars as I like to call them, and as the dragons refer to them, that's actually where I got that. Don't think that was Drake's cool idea, because it wasn't. Sight and sound, the ability to see something, the ability to hear something, really is going to be 80 to 90% of the bulk of your information as a practitioner for doing your spell work, your evocations, gaining your information, scrying, and the likes. So if you really nail down those two, you're good to go. And sight being one of the harder ones, we did the Arcane Sight course over at the school, which there's a link below to the online school. And those techniques in that class, which by the way, that class is completely free, can easily be utilized and translated over into any of the other arcane senses. That's why we've never actually gone in and done a more detailed class for each of the senses. And I'm wanting to potentially do a video focused on each of the senses here to help tack on a little extra to that class. But touch is a hard one. I've had so many people asking me about touch. And it is a tricky one, without a doubt. But it's also not as tricky as people think. Because when you're in the astral and you're grabbing things, it's hard to know. What we have to understand is anytime you're in the astral traveling, anytime you're doing anything like that, the image has to still be processed by our mind in order to enact with what we call a physical sensation. You got to understand, planar sensations and physical sensations are different, so our mind has to translate and interpret. So the easiest way to train this is to start with something you know. So if you check out our video on astral sanctums and setting one of those up, it is easy to set one of those up. Like I said, if you can see it in your mind, if you can move around and interact with it, you're there. It's that simple. Then people's like, well, I want the tactile senses to become more real. How do I do it? Honestly, start with things you know. Start with things you know what they feel like. Start with stones. Start with wood. Start with water. Start with concrete. Start with bricks. Start with petting an animal that you are very aware of what its fur feels like. Because if you are utilizing and interacting with things in your sanctum that you already have a working knowledge of what it should feel like, your brain is now going to connect your arcane senses with this memory, and it's going to start to channel this through the senses and produce that and let you register it. And it's going to understand that when your energy body or your astral body is interacting with these objects, it should be producing information for you. See, technically our brains aren't naturally going to produce this information. So we kind of got to train them to tell us, hey, I'm doing something. What am I doing? Tell me what this feels like. You've got to make sure it's giving you the info. And that's pretty much doable by this. You can easily interact with these things. Now, as you get better at it, that sensation is going to become more and more tangible, more and more real. possibly to the point you couldn't tell the difference between a piece of wood in the astral and a piece of wood in the physical world. That's great. But as this develops, what you're going to notice happens very, very naturally is when you interact with something you may not have the knowledge of, it comes through accurate as well. And that's the trick. You're using what you know to build and train your brain to give you the information freely as you interact with objects. That's all you're doing. That way, once your brain is trained to translate that information, it immediately starts to translate information from things it has no memory of as well. That is the entire point here. I know this is a pretty short video, but it really is kind of that simple in order to train this particular sense. It's just about taking the time to interact with those things. And for me personally, I think the Arcane Sanctum or the Astral Sanctum, whatever you want to call it, is hands down the best way to do it because you can control that sanctum. You can literally create objects in order to interact with in that sanctum and actually actively work to train your arcane touch by utilizing tactile sensory input and memory to train your brain that it is supposed to give you that relay. Some people's brains, I will admit, some people's brains naturally just relay information. Just relay it. And that's pretty cool. But not everybody's brain is as willing to just relay information. Some people, we got to train it. We got to remind it, hey, I'm doing something. Yes, it's not in the physical, but I still expect you to relay the information. Come on, get off your butt. Let's go. Break's over. Sometimes we got to do that. I was actually one of them. My brain, it was interesting because my brain never actually cared too much about the tactile touch when I first started working. But at the same time, neither did I, to be truthful. I didn't either. So I don't really know when my brain personally started just naturally translating that because it just happened very natural in my time working in the astral. But when it did happen, I'll admit I was a little shocked. It kind of freaked me out once I realized what was happening. And part of me wonders how long it had been happening before I realized it. So, it's some of those things that as a beginner, I didn't even think to look for. I didn't even know were a thing. But having sat back and talked to mentors and other practitioners and magicians and getting some clarification on it, it made very good sense why it did slowly start to pick up because I was interacting with a lot of things that I knew what they were. I knew what they were. So if I felt them, it wouldn't shake me because it's like I knew it was supposed to feel like that. But as I got into areas where I didn't necessarily know what something should feel like, and I touched it, and there was a reaction. That, I think, is what kind of sparked my, wait, something's going on here. But it did develop naturally in that way, which, in my experience, it can develop naturally without any direct focus. But for people who are actually genuinely wanting to develop this particular arcane sense, it can be tricky because it's like I'm trying to touch it, but how do I touch it? And it's not that we can't touch it in the astral. It's actually very easy to reach over and grab something in the astral and be like, haha, a coffee pot. But how do you engage that arcane sense? That's kind of the trickier one because when we're dealing with touch. And honestly, the best way to engage your mind and to translate that touch from the astral and allow you to feel it is through the memories of what you've already got, to interact with them in the astral so that your brain has a common ground and can link the two up very, very simply. Okay? So if you are interested in developing your arcane touch, give this a try. Check out our video on the Astral Sanctum. I'll try and make sure it's linked here or here. It's usually up here somewhere. When I post this video, I'll make sure that video is linked up there in the cards. But so check that out if you don't have an Astral Sanctum already. If you do, just jump on in there and give this a try. Conjure up things you know what they feel like. Conjure up things that you can interact with. I do generally recommend starting with simple things like stone. Has a singular texture to it. It's easy and direct. Start with water, woods, stuff like that, but then move into more complex things as you develop as well. That can actually help. So try to make that progression there. I think you'll find it pretty interesting, and I think you'll get some great results from it. All right. If this has helped you, please hit that subscribe button and turn on the notifications so you're notified anytime we release a new video. Also, we do live streams every Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Consider joining us live and asking some questions. We also have a Discord server with a wonderful community. You can find the Discord link in the About section here on the channel. And until next time, I'm Drake, and this has been Working Dragon Mystic. Take care. Bye-bye.